Hi, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'm going to show you how to build this mid-century modern inspired console table using just a circular saw and a handheld miter box to cut all the pieces on modern builds. And this video is sponsored by the Home Depot Consumer Credit Card, so visit www.thdcard.com/Mike for more information, and I'll leave a link in the description as well. Let's get started. So all the materials and supplies for this project came from the Home Depot, and I started by getting my 2 pieces of 3/4 inch maple plywood cut on the panel saw to width. Then I could bring it back home and cut it all to length. I started by first cutting my tops and bottoms with a straight edge and a circular saw. Make sure whenever you cut plywood with a circular saw, you have it face down, that way you don't have as much tear out. Masking tape helps too. And don't worry, all my dimensions are going to be in the written article, that way you have all the information to build this right. And while I was at Home Depot, I went through their poplar. Now poplar comes in a lot of different shades, from white to brown to a greenish shade. But I found a piece that matched my maple as close as I could find, and then I ran it through my table saw and cut it into 3/16 inch strips. Now this is what I'm going to use as edge banding to cover up the visible plies of the plywood. If you don't want to go through this trouble, you could always use iron-on edge banding as well. Then I ran it all through the planer, that way I had a really smooth surface as well as a consistent 1/8 inch thickness. Next, I just marked how long each piece needed to be, and then I cut it with my hand saw in my miter box. And I actually found that this gave me cleaner results than my miter saw did, and that's just because I don't have a 0 insert plate on my miter saw, and it gave me a lot less tear out. I'm using just regular old Titebond 2 wood glue to hold my edge banding on, and if this is something you don't want to do, like I said earlier, you can always use iron-on edge banding. Anywhere I had a corner that I had 2 pieces of edge banding meeting, I would always use mitered corners. I just thought this made it look a lot nicer than using simple butt joints, but you could always do whatever you want. And if I ever had a corner where the miter went a little past the edge, I just used a flat file to bring it into that corner. It doesn't take much, and then once I had it all flush, I could go ahead and put my next piece on. And if you don't want to go through all the trouble of using the bandy clamps or the bar clamps I used, you could always just use masking tape, and it works really, really well. I got my first hand plane a couple weeks ago, a block plane, and I've been trying to find opportunities to use it and get more comfortable with it. So I used that to flush up my molding with the face of the plywood, but you could always just sand it down. These corner clamps make it really easy to put cabinets together. They're from Rockler, and I'll leave a link to them in my written article as well. And I used brad nails on the bottom of my cabinet, but I didn't use any type of fasteners on the top face. Then I measured 2 feet from each side of the cabinet and installed my spacers. Once I knew everything was square, I could go ahead and clamp everything tight. And with the main body of the cabinet finished, I could go ahead and start on the apron. Now I'm making this out of the 3-inch strips that I had cut on the panel saw, and I'm using pocket holes to attach it from the underside into the base. Mitered corners are pretty hard to glue up on their own, so I just decided to use masking tape, and that was plenty enough to keep it together. For the feet, I started with a 3-inch by 6-inch block of plywood, and then I measured 1 inch in from opposite corners and drew a line to match those 2 points together. Then I could use a handsaw and cut along those 2 points, and then edge band each of the visible edges. And instead of trying to do the math to figure out what all these angles were, I just cut the pieces to where they overhung a little bit and then cut and sanded them flush. Then I could just go ahead and add my extra piece on and then file it down as well. These legs are really a simple shape, but I love how they came out, and I think they really add to the aesthetic of the whole piece. To attach the legs to the apron, I decided to use my Kreg jig drill bit. That way I could drill starter holes into my apron and then use screws and wood glue to glue in and screw in the legs to the apron. This ended up being really, really strong. And once the legs were all in, I could go ahead and center my apron and screw it into the base of the cabinet. So like I said earlier in this video, all of the materials and supplies for this project can be purchased at the Home Depot with the Home Depot Consumer Credit Card. The card has some really great benefits and can help you tackle some of the bigger projects on your list with longer term financing. So visit www.thdcard.com/Mike for more information. And like I said, there'll be a link in the description to find out more. Next, I went ahead and cut my first door, then what will be my drawer face, and finally my second door. In that order, that way the grain from all three pieces would run together and look really cool. Then I could go ahead and get my European style hinges and use the instructions as well as the template that came with them to install them on the door and the cabinet. The templates that came with it made it really easy to install everything and really hard to mess up. And I am completely obsessed with soft close hinges. I love them. Next, I went ahead and made a really simple drawer box with an inset bottom, and I just used a scrap piece of 1/2-inch plywood that I had laying around for the bottom. Then I could go ahead and nail and glue it in. Next, I went ahead and installed my drawer slides, which is super easy, and the instructions included really make it easy to do. I came up with a really easy way to make sure my drawer face was lined up where it needed to be with everything else by just taping in a scrap piece of wood while I screwed in the drawer face. I also cut and installed a shelf at the top of the drawer face with pocket holes. Finally, with everything built, I could sand, starting at 80 grit all the way up to 220 grit, and then put on a Danish oil finish. I love using Danish oil because you just put on 2 coats, and once it's dry, you're done. Whenever I was drawing and designing this project, I had the intention of using drawer handles and a drawer pull, but after I built it, I loved the sleek look of not using them, and everything was still really easy to open and close and super accessible. This was also the first time I ever used solid wood edge banding, and I gotta say, it looks way better than if I would have used iron-on edge banding. It was a lot more work, but definitely worth it. So thanks a lot for watching, and if this is your first time at my channel, I want to say welcome, as well as please subscribe, because I put out a new project video every week, and you'll definitely want to stay updated with those. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. That lets me know what kind of projects you guys are into and what you might be interested in seeing next. And if you've got any questions or comments on this project, don't forget to leave that below. I try to get to all of those and answer as many as I can. And don't forget to check out www.thdcard.com/Mike to find more information about the Home Depot Consumer Credit Card and all the great offers that go along with it. So one more big thanks to you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time on Modern Builds.